Buenas tardes, chicos, and welcome to the first Let's Study Together. Please keep in mind that these aren't meant to replace class. They're meant to just be a supplement to class. I like to keep them short, so that way it's short to the point, and normally they go over the harder kind of grammar concepts that we'll see in the chapter. So it's just for if you have a quick little question, you're like, oh, I can't remember this. Let me go check Let's Study Together and see if it's there or not. Then go check the PowerPoint. If it's not there, obviously just email me. But the point of it is just to give you a quick little recap in 2 to 5 minutes over some of the more challenging topics. So that way you don't have to go through digging a whole bunch of stuff. And if it's not there, you know where to go to the PowerPoint. And if it's not there, email me. So let's go ahead and get started with telling time. We're not going to go over how to just tell time in general because we already went over that in class. Y'all practice with that on my Spanish lab. We're going to go over the kind of a little more confusing concepts within telling time that students generally struggle with. So first we're starting time with menos. Menos, as we know, means less or minus. So for example, we have son las 10 menos 5 de la noche. This means that it is 9:55 or 5 to 10. We have this exact same concept in English. We say, oh, it's 20 minutes to noon, or it's 10 minutes to 3. So it's the same idea, just in Spanish. And with these kind of things in grammar, I like to try and break it down into a formula. So that way it's not necessarily, oh, how do I construct this sentence? It's putting pieces together to construct the sentence. So the formula is obviously when we're telling time, we have our es or son, depending if we're working with one or a number greater than one. Then we have our las going along with that. Then we have the time that it is going to be, minus however many minutes to get to that time. So an example would be, es la 1 menos 20 de la tarde. This would mean it's 12:40 or it's 20 minutes to 1. And we know that because this is the future time we're talking about minus 20. So when you're doing subtraction of time, obviously that would make it 12:40 in the afternoon. Another example would be son las 11 menos 40 de la mañana, meaning it's 11:20 p.m. before midnight. And we know that because we have our son las, then here's the time we're talking about, 11 minus 40, making it 10:20 in the morning. So there you can see that's how I personally think about it, rather than trying to construct an entire sentence together like this. I like to break it down. First you got to start with your time. Make sure you have your es or son depending on what you're talking about. Then the time that it is going to be will be right here, minus whatever time. And then of course you need your de la mañana, de la tarde, de la noche, so that way we know exactly what time you're talking about. Media y cuarto, it's a lot simpler than menos, but it can still give students problems at first. I think partially because cuarto looks so much like cuatro, which is an important difference there. It's just the difference between where the R and T are. So that's one detail to definitely pay attention to. So to start, media means it when you're talking about time, 30. So like 1:30, 12:30, 2:30, 3:30, etc. So for example, we have son las 2:30 de la mañana. It's 2:30 a.m. For the test's sake, if somehow you're not able to remember that media is used, it's okay to say something like son las 2:30, but in a real world application, a real world situation, it would sound kind of funny. They would definitely understand what you're saying, what you're talking about, but it would just sound kind of funny. So that's not to say you won't be able to get your point across if you say 30, but media is, if you want to sound more native like, media is the way to go. But on a test, worst case scenario, I'd rather you put 30 than nothing, so that way you can still at least get your points. So it obviously applies morning, afternoon, and night, depending on when you're talking about. Cuarto is where students generally have more trouble with, because it can mean For example, like 1:15, 12:15, 6:15, or a quarter. And we'll get to a quarter in a sec. But for example, we have son las 3:15 de la tarde. It's 3:15 p.m. Just like how media is, you can say son las 3:15, but it will sound a little funny. You definitely get your point across to understand exactly what you're talking about. But just like I was saying with media, it sounds a little more native-like if you were to use cuarto, because cuarto literally means quarter. So you'd be saying it's 3:15 basically. And we have the same idea in English too. Then it can be combined with menos, like we just went over it in the previous slide. So you could say son las 10 menos cuarto de la mañana, meaning it's 9:45 a.m. or it's a quarter till 10. So it does seem a little confusing at first, but it's really not that bad. And then just a few other expressions to go over. I'm not going to go over these because you can just read them, but I wanted to cover más o menos a little bit. Obviously we know it means more or less or about, but I just want to show you all an example so that way you know how it can be used when you're talking about time. For example, you could say son las 6 de la tarde más o menos, meaning it's about 6 in the afternoon or it's around 6 in the afternoon. So I hope y'all find this helpful,